All the second stage tanks now pressurized. Astronauts report it feels good. T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Like a furry torpedo to the jugular. This is Honey Badger Radio. Radio with bite.
Hello and welcome to HBR Talk 382. They smile in your face. And all the while, all the time, they want to take your place. The backstabbers. And we are unfortunately back to that because I couldn't find anything light and cute that I thought we could discuss instead of this tonight. This is kind of important anyway. It's a coup attempt, and it might still be. They might still be trying to do this. They probably are. Even after they get caught, they usually will try to, oh, we're not doing that now. We've stopped. We're sorry. We apologize. But then in the background, like, all right, well let's pivot to this, and we'll call it something else. We'll relabel it and everything, but we're still gonna do the same thing. So that's where we are tonight. Sorry guys, I'm your host Hannah Wallen here with Nonsense Annihilator Lauren Brooks and the personification of perceptivity Mike Stevenson. Hello. Along with the Doge in charge Brian Martinez in the background, making sure the car goes vroom vroom vroom. And tonight we have to fall back to the treacherous ground under the Humanitarian Initiative Veil to deal with our raging USAIDs infection. But before we do that, we got to do what we got to do. And so it is time to shill the shills. As always, Honey Badger Radio dishes out a smorgasbord of thought-provoking discussions, and as experiences both recent and long past have demonstrated, the provoked thoughts are fighting back. They've made it clear that for people like us, relying on third-party payment platforms like Patreon to fund our work is treading on thin ice. Or building our house in the path of a rapidly growing wildfire. In light of this, we strongly encourage our supporters to switch at least their support for us to feedthebadger.com, the most stable way to help us out. And if you want to tip us directly instead of relying on any social media platform's tip jar, the link for that is feedthebadger.com /justthetip. So that's feedthebadger.com /justthetip. Because you don't want to slash the whole thing. That kind of leads to gender ideology, actually. And as always, the same risk applies to our social media platforms, both the wildfire risk and having the whole thing slashed, which is why you should further provoke the thought police by tracking our thought-provoking discussions on honeybadgerbrigade.com, where you can find your way to all of our content, as well as a link to feedthebadger.com in the drop-down menu at the top of the page. And, oh my gosh, Murder of Crows is on it tonight. Yes, herpes, gonosyphilades, yep. These agencies that fund these NGOs that try to enact coup attempts against the nation that is feeding them. They're every STI in the book just kind of like morphed all into one big ball of STI, and then now they've shoved it down our throats. So what you're looking at is a Twitter thread we've been going through, and we will start there, but there's a rabbit hole because there's always a rabbit hole. There's always a fucking rabbit hole, guys. There is never just a simple discussion about shit. So tonight we're gonna dig into that hole. And yes, the innuendo is strong with this one. But they asked for it. They've been asking for it. And top of the lungs, screaming for it, begging, please dig into our hole. And so we will. But with that, I want to remind you before we do anything else. The last thing that we looked at was this gobbledygook of a sentence that they left us with, trying to explain briefly. Okay, guys, here's what we're doing. So we're gonna listen to that again because holy fuck.
The foment of the current constitutional crisis is our opportunity to catalyze and synergize a dynamic change making fractal ecosystems capable of co-generating the emergence of the new thriving together based socio-political economic governance systems. That is a long sentence.
Even they have to admit that the buzzword soup is a little too rich. Right? So what did they basically say there? let's go over it again.
The foment of the current constitutional crisis is,
in other words, we are upset at the outcome of the recent election and the policies of the new administration. Not that there's actually a constitutional crisis. Not that it's actually being supported, as a constitutional crisis, and not that there is actually a coup going on from the side they oppose. This is called a fair and free election in which the people had their say, and the administration came in and began doing what the people said we want. Like that's what has them so upset. But yeah, the foment of the current constitutional crisis
is our opportunity to catalyze and synergize a dynamic change making.
In other words, this is our opportunity. This new administration, they don't have the experience that the existing establishment has with working with the bureaucracy to maintain a stronghold over the people. And so we can sneak in under their radar and do things behind their back. That's what she's saying there.
A dynamic change, making fractal ecosystems capable of co-generating the emergence of the new thriving together.
Meaning, we could take all the tiny little organizations and departments and agencies and sub-agencies and offices and so on, and conspire to overthrow them from the inside and from behind their backs.
Based socio-political economic governance systems. That is
meaning that what they're going to use isn't a military overthrow, right? It's not an information war that gets the people on their side. It's going to be control over the economy and control over the conversation, ways of preventing people from dissenting, and ways of punishing people if they try.
a long sentence.
And that is a long sentence. And it is a means of disguising the fact that what she just said was that all of these various organizations that use the USAIDs infection, the USAID system infection, to reach through your federal government into your pocket and take your money and pay their grifters to do jack shit for the people they say they're doing things for. All those people, they're going to try to conspire to get a clamp on the economy through various means of controlling how money flows, so that if you dissent, they can punish you. And they want to get a clamp on social media so that they have total control over all of the different ways that money flows. And in doing so, that will give them control over your ability to dissent, to vet ideas, to attempt to participate in the civic process as a decision maker, as what you are. The nation that you live in is a corporation. Every nation is a corporation, right? The shareholders in the corporation are the people in the nation. So you, the shareholders in this corporation known as the United States, are basically being told, no, fuck you, we're going to run it, and you don't get to decide. Your vote's not going to count. We're going to make sure that you can't make informed choices, and we're going to control you so that you have no choice when you vote. And you just basically are going in and ticking off a box so that it looks like you approve of what we're doing. And we're going to prevent you from stopping us from stealing your money, which is what we're doing. And that is essentially the entirety of USAID's outlook. They're entitled to your money. They're coming for your dollars, and your kids, by the way. And that's where we are. So how are they going to do this? Well, here we go. This is a hell of a thing, right? They have this organized system. There's always an organized system, right? There's always a method. There's always a how are we going to do this, guys? Well, here's how. And here we go.
This is the Our Common Purpose Initiative, and it ties into an implementation initiative called More Perfect, and it ties completely into the panel you just heard from Priya Shankar, this whole notion that civil society is clearly part of the sustainability requirements that we have. So with that, and again, I apologize.
Now, when they say sustainability, they're not talking about you being able to maintain a solid economy, being able to grow food or anything, keeping the environment from tanking so that, we don't end up in some sort of weird industrial pollution laden cancer cluster or something. No, it's about sustaining their way of government. Right? So this thing he mentioned, our common purpose thing, we'll get into that in a minute, but I'll let it go here for a minute.
Apologize, as does Steve. I mean, he literally did this for me because once he knew he couldn't get here. So, hit it. Thank you.
Hello, and thanks for including me in your conversation today. I'm very grateful to my friend Bob Bernstein for this invitation.
By the way, this guy really sounds like he should be going Bueller. He's very, very exciting speaker.
I'm Stephen Heinz. I'm the co-chair of a national commission that was organized by the American Academy of Arts and Sciences to study.
Just a point here, all right? I want you to think about the name of this. This is not the American Academy of Protecting the Civil and Human Rights of the Citizens, protecting the shareholders of the corporation that our nation is. No, the arts and sciences. The people who think they're better than you. So he is. What did he say he is? Let's see. Let's listen to this again.
I'm very grateful to my friend Bob Bernstein for this invitation. I'm Stephen Heinz. I'm the co-chair of a national commission
of people who think they're better than you.
That was organized by the American Academy of Arts and Sciences to study the health of American democracy.
There it is. Our democracy. So what do they mean when they say democracy? They mean their ability to manipulate votes and other processes within the democratic republic that we are, the representative republic that we are, to override the public. That's what they mean by democracy. And a very short lesson, huh?
And they will always have a stranglehold over this situation, as long as everyone's convinced that democracy is the best or indeed only way to proceed with things. And that's why there are so many of us pushing back against this and saying, like, it's not just to do with the adage that democracy is the worst possible system apart from all the others. No, there are other systems better than this. There are other systems with better track records for sustaining a country for millennia as opposed to centuries. Democracy has only lasted for centuries. You could consider ancient Greece, but even that only lasted for centuries. That too eventually shrank into nothingness, and so did the Roman Empire. But monarchies have kept on going. They've weaved in between the democracies, and they will continue to do so. It's a tricky question as to what degree we can ever get back to that, or if we can get beyond that into something that's neither monarchy nor democracy, like anarcho-capitalism. Oh no! Oh, he said it. Yeah, I said it. It's it sounds like pie in the sky, but we do live in different times, in very different times, and maybe there's such a thing as anarcho-monarchy. What? What's it? I'm trying to think as flexibly as I can, or anarcho-capitalist monarchy, or whatever it is. Whatever combination of things will work. But this constant insistence that the only thing that can work is democracy it seems to be finally having its legs like shoved out from under it, because especially given that it's conducted by people who call it our democracy, and we're trying to translate what they mean by our democracy. They don't call it the democracy. They don't even call it democracy without the definite article, or without an indefinite article. Like, a democracy is our democracy. Like, why do you insist on calling it that? It's for the same reason communists kept calling everything the people's whatever it was. That's what democracy means, ruled by the people, and it's obviously a euphemism. Like the way the Soviet Union called everything the people's thing, but it was never the people's thing. It was the ruling class's thing. And that's what they mean by our democracy. It's not the people's thing. It's because it's something that the ruling class speak of. It's, if anything, it's our oligarchy.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
When they say that, what they are saying is, we are the owners of this so-called democracy, and they're not enamored of democracy because they think it gives everyone an equal say. They're enamored of democracy because they think it gives them a better opportunity to manipulate the system by stacking the deck against individuals. And it does. It gives them a perfect opportunity for it. In Ohio, when my parents were teaching, the school systems had a debate going on when my parents were young teachers. Do we become a closed state for union schools? In other words, the state and national teachers associations, the state and national teachers unions, they wanted to set it up so that in the public school system, all of the schools, all of the teachers had to be union members, as in closed shop. And the schools, most of the schools didn't want that. The overwhelming majority of actual school systems, the teachers in those school systems did not want that. Right? But in the urban areas, the teachers did want that. And there were more classroom teachers in bigger school systems in those areas. So the way that they were voting, each school system would vote on their own. And they decided to make it an individual democratic vote. And they pushed and pushed and pushed until they got that changed so that the school systems could not decide for themselves, each system, how they wanted to go. What they had instead in the school systems prior to the unions was professional associations, which were more similar to the old-fashioned guild, where they did create standards and practices as the unions do, but the teachers themselves, the individual teachers in the local school systems, had a lot more input into that, and it wasn't top down; it was bottom up. And so the people that worked with and observed the behaviors and needs of the students were the ones who were most active in deciding what they should be doing for the students, what the students needed, and how to best serve them. And then along comes this change. We're going to change the way we vote so that instead of giving the school systems, the different school systems, their own say on whether to make it so that the entire state has to do the same thing or not. And you know, they could have gone through and said, well, our school system is going to be a union school system, even if other school systems are not. Or our system is going to be a professional association school system, even if other school systems are not. They created this this manner of voting in which the number of teachers in the urban areas were able to overwhelm the vote and force the country schools, the rural schools, basically, and the small town schools that did not need to have a national association controlling their curriculum into accepting and joining the National Education Association. And they did this in every state. Once they had a strong grip on the entire country, they began inserting, by the way, the world is going to end in 10 years if we don't stop fishing, into the curriculum. And it wasn't just in science class where, you know, parents might actually read what the kid is learning and say, no, wait a minute, I'm going to push back on that a little bit. Just like it wasn't just in health class when they introduced, by the way, you might have been born in the wrong body, and you get special treatment in the classroom if you were. In fact, you're nobody if you are content with your gender and content with your sexuality. Oh, and by the way, 5-year-old kid, sexuality is blah 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 blah. Like that's where we ended up as a result of that, right? And they basically stiff-armed the entire country into that by changing the way the system for voting it into place worked to overwhelm the majority of schools, the majority of communities, with the populace of the minority of communities that were urban areas. They could have done this without forcing it on everybody else. So just keep that in mind, right? And we'll see a little bit more what this guy has to say.
We worked together for more than 2 years, a very diverse group of Americans from all parts of the country, from different sectors of our society, and with different political perspectives. And
So this has been a long-standing conspiracy. They've been working on this individual project. They organized this project and have been working on it for 2 years, which means this is part of the long march through the institutions. Yes, Murder of Crows. I remember that. 75, Murder of Crows 7512. Weren't we supposed to be under 2 miles of ice since the late 70s? And yeah, my area kind of had a panic about that in 1978 when we had a blizzard, and the snow drifts in various areas got as tall as Canadian snow drifts. So we were driving in between walls of snow for a few weeks after that. It's happening. It's happening. Well, no, it wasn't happening. It's just that Ohio is flat up north. Southern Ohio is slightly less flat, and as you get to southeastern Ohio, it's even much more less flat, if that makes sense. There's hills in that part of Ohio, the actual real bumps in the ground and stuff. But where I grew up, it's flat. It's flat. And because it's where the glaciers scraped everything off and just rubbed it smooth. And
at this point, we're being told about rising sea levels, and that means most of the Netherlands is going to be underwater. Well, they've been told that they're going to be underwater in a year
Forever.
now for the last few decades. And they're like, no, we seem to be doing just fine. Thank you very much. If we built these man-made structures to make sure we don't become underwater. That's a fucking dog accent.
That's okay. It's true, though, that's what they've done. They've pretty much conquered it.
What is it? The Maldives or whatever it is? This series of islands in the Indian Ocean that's it's got the lowest elevation of any country. Like the highest elevation at any point in the series of islands is 25 meters or something, and they've been warned for decades now that they're going to be the first to go underwater, and they're still there. Just no, hasn't happened yet. We're bracing for the worst, but the shoreline doesn't seem to have budged a smacking inch so far. But yeah, we believe you. Give us all the money you have to make sure that we can prevent this from happening.
Look, I'll believe it. I'll believe it when wealthy politicians quit buying shoreline properties.
Yes. That shit is just how more in your face can you be?
Yeah.
Talking out one side of your mouth, oh my god, the world is gonna all the glaciers are melting, but let me buy this $9.5 million sprawling estate. Get the fuck out of here.
On the beaches of California.
Yes.
To be fair, they have enough money to just abandon those particular properties because they have a dozen other properties elsewhere in the world. But you can examine what's actually happening to the sea levels and the shoreline, and that's what's important. They're never going to leave those houses because the sea isn't fucking moving at all. That's what's important.
There's another thing that you gotta pay attention to as well. All right, the ice that is floating in the ocean, if it melts, that doesn't matter at all. Okay, it's the ice that is sitting on something. If it's on top of something, the ice that's on land or the ice that is propped on the bottom of the ocean and goes all the way from the bottom of the ocean to the surface, where it stands up out of the ocean because it can't sink any further. If that ice melts, that might make a difference. I want you to take a clear plastic cup.
Yeah,
and
that's what I was going to say.
Fill it with water about halfway, and then put ice in it that doesn't touch the bottom. Just put any ice in it at all. It doesn't touch the bottom. And I want you to see what happens to the water level. Mark it with a marker, and see what happens to the water level as that ice melts.
It does not overflow over the sides of the container. This is a simple physics experiment that they should teach you when you're fucking 12.
Yeah, but they're busy scaring the shit out of small children because they can't convince adults that ice will behave differently in the ocean than it does in other water. So again, unless they then come through and say, well, all the land mass ice is going to melt, and that much ice will actually raise the sea level somehow, then their fear mongering isn't going to work, right? So yeah, it's kind of pathetic, but yeah, this has been going on for a long time, guys. When my parents first heard from me that, I came home from school all upset because of some of the environmental stuff I was being taught. And my dad was like, when I was in school, they told us we were severely overpopulated and that by the time you were born, there wouldn't be room for two people to stand together. We would all have just a standing room only left on Earth at the rate of birth in the world. Because they weren't considering the rate of death in the world or the rate of scientific advancement that allowed buildings to be made that lots of people can live in a small amount of land and so on. But in the meantime, none of that has ever happened. Like every prediction they've made, none of it has happened. We haven't run out of fish. Every 10 years for the last 70 years or so. None of that. So all of these dire predictions are bullshit. It's just ways of manipulating you. Now, does that mean that it's okay to dump toxic chemicals into the groundwater? No. We still have to be not environmentally stupid, right? Don't set your lakes and rivers on fire, people. We had a fire at one point in the Ohio River. Actually, it's been on fire multiple times, and the EPA was kind of invented because of things that happened in Ohio. But there's a balance. There's got to be a balance between the efforts to not do stupid things environmentally and the efforts to use environmental science as a scare tactic to control people economically, which is what these people are doing. And this, by the way, is why they want control over social media, because this discussion isn't something that they want us to be allowed to have. They don't want us to be allowed to have this discussion where you point out that ice and water do not behave the way that they are threatening us that they will behave. That's something that is just not acceptable to the elites. So going on here.
We looked at the research, the data, the literature, but most importantly,
the propaganda.
We went on a listening tour. And we listened to Americans in 50 communities across this country in very diverse settings.
Oh, 50 whole communities? 50 whole communities? Oh my God, what did that take you, like an afternoon?
Yeah. There are 50 communities on one side, one corner of Ohio.
Right.
Sorry, guys. Maybe there's only 50 communities. No, there's probably more than 50 communities in Connecticut. As tiny as it is.
Oh, yeah.
And there's probably 50 communities in a part of Ohio the size of Connecticut.
Yeah. And it was probably like a fucking Zoom call, right? Like a Zoom meeting.
Yeah.
People are so full of shit.
They went to 50 nursing homes in Florida. What kind of communities are we talking about? Oh, the ones where like you ask people questions about their political views and they tell you what their grandchildren are doing this week because they've seen pictures on the Facebook. Yeah, no, I hate to make fun of this, but I'm sorry. That's pathetic. 50 communities. That's it. That's all they talk to. That's him telling you we very carefully cultivated the set of people we were talking to, curated the set of people we were talking to get the answers we wanted so that we could then come and tell you, we talked to representatives of the people and this is what the people had to say, when in fact it's just their cronies.
And with very divergent points of view. And we came away from that convinced that our
The very divergent points of view are, well, the Titanic is sinking. We think that the chairs should be placed in a star pattern. And the divergent point is, no. The chairs have always been in rows. We need to put them in rows.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody has considered the possibility of not running into the iceberg.
democracy needs not only to be reformed, but really, in a way, reinvented, reimagined.
Oh, there's another one. What did he just say there? Let's go back. Not that far.
In very diverse settings, and with very divergent points of view. And we came away from that convinced that our democracy needs not only to be reformed, but really, in a way, reinvented.
They need to reinvent democracy.
Imagined.
Reimagine democracy. And what does that mean? When they say they want to reinvent and reimagine things, it means, oh, well, we're not getting the results we want, therefore you're doing it wrong and we want to change it.
Yep.
Very simple, right? What we have right now, if Ohio and the other states had done this with regard to the unions, we would have had a better result, a result that was more representative of what the teachers wanted. We have, in our parliamentary system, we have one set of representatives that gets voted for, that each state gets the same number of votes regardless of population. And then we have one set that is specifically representative of the populace, the population. So if your state has a larger population, you get more of this type of representative. And if your state has a smaller population, you get less of this type of representative. And they have districts rather than representing the entire state, although to a degree they represent the entire state. And so it allows an equal say for states with smaller populations, and it also allows individuals to have their sway on the system by sending representatives that handle both. And this is important. Both the populace representatives and the representatives of the actual states have to agree enough that a majority of both of them pass a law before it actually goes to be signed by our executive leader. And then the executive leader has to have been voted in by the largest number of voters out of everybody that voted in his election. So you have a popular leader, a leader that the populace decided on, right? And that also goes through a system that gives the states their say, and that does allow states with larger populations a little more sway. So you have sort of two pins in already for a democratic popular vote system, but you have a check on it for a nationwide, every state gets their say system. And then if it turns out to be unconstitutional, then the Supreme Court can throw it out. So it's a pretty good system because it allows several little checks and balances that prevent a group of people from coming along and saying, well, if we can get 50.0001% of the population to agree that X is better than Y, then they can just trample over the 49.999%. That allows a little bit of contention between them, and the possibility of back and forth, and the possibility that actually it takes more of a majority than that to override a minority of voters. It's something has to be much more popular to make that big of a change. And if that had been the case with the unionization of our schools, for instance, they would have had to engage in a significant level of salesmanship to get the smaller schools to agree to it, because they wouldn't have been able to just trample them in the process. Richard Bier just sent us $5 and said, there's a book by Tom Kratman called A Desert Called Peace, which is a science fiction book about a society 500 years in our future. The elites have said that they have a desire to see the rest of the world outside their gated communities, only to be lit by fire. So that's the entire thing, I think. And I'm not sure the way that sentence is written, and there's no period at the end of it, if that's the entire sentence. It's not a book I've read, so I don't know what the story is. So, Richard, you might need to clarify that one a little bit, because I'm not sure what you're saying there. Whether it's if they want to leave their gated communities, but they catch on fire when they leave, or if they only want that area to be lit by fire and no place else, or what. I'm not sure there. But in any case, just that little lesson, it's going to be important as we go through this a little bit.
For the kinds of challenges we face in the 21st century. In June of 2020, we issued this report, Our Common Purpose, Reinventing American Democracy for the 21st Century. It includes 31 very concrete recommendations for changes to our institutions, our processes, but also ways to revive a healthier civic culture.
So what did he just say there? Let's go back and I'm gonna rewind again here.
Institutions, our process.
A little more than that.
One, very concrete recommendations for changes to our institutions, our processes, but also ways to revive a healthier civic culture.
So they're so mad. All right. They're so mad that men put their foot down and said, no, stop stealing from us. Stop paying women to make stupid choices. Stop sending us to war when there's nothing for us to fight for. There's not a cause that we support. There's not a threat to our homes and our families. Right? Stop trampling our property rights. Stop trampling our civil rights. Stop railroading us in the court systems and taking our children away. They're so mad that men said no to these things that they want to change the entire government system, the entire election system, the way that our leadership of this corporation is decided. This is a coup is essentially the hostile takeover of a corporation by outsiders, by minority shareholders, and people who are parts of other corporations, other countries. Richard Bier says the gated communities would have all of the modern technology, and those outside would be living Stone Age lifestyles to protect the environment. Oh, I see how that is. Okay. Yep. So the wealthy people have earned the right to use electric lights and so on, but you plebs that destroy the environment, it's your fault we're in this situation. So you have to use candles, and you have to heat your home with a fireplace. well, we have a furnace that runs on gas or electricity or something. Yeah, that's how that. I can see that. I could totally see that. But yeah, so this is what he's saying here is, again, we want to rig the game because we lost in a fair fight and we don't like it. They're not protecting your right to vote. They're not protecting the system that you use to determine the leadership of your corporation. They are trying to take it over. They are engaging in a hostile takeover.
We are now embarked on a campaign with partners all across the country to help advance these reforms to our democracy in order to restore it, to save it.
We have to save our democracy from the voters, guys. Those evil voters aren't doing what we want them to do. So how are they going to save our democracy? Oh, no, wait, no, it's their democracy. How are they going to save their democracy that we, the plebs, are not part of? So let's take a look at this. Strategy 1. Okay, well, we'll just look at they have this table of contents, right? And let's see if I don't know if I'm going to go through and read all of this part. I want to get straight to the strategies just because the first couple things here are really egregious. Achieve equality of voice and representation. Sounds good, right? Sounds like they're trying to make sure that you have your say. But what does it actually mean? What are they actually trying to do? Expand both the House of Representatives and the ways that people can vote for their representatives. Change how districts are drawn. This is called gerrymandering, by the way. First, to eliminate partisan gerrymandering. So they're going to use gerrymandering to eliminate gerrymandering, guys. That totally is effective. And then to make them larger, allowing several representatives per district. Amend this basically creates contention in Congress between representatives for the same district. That's helpful. Amend the Constitution to allow for congressional regulation of campaign expenditures. So what's wrong with allowing the government to decide what people can contribute to, how people can financially back a candidate that they like? What do you think might be the problem with allowing incumbents to place limitations on your ability to fund the campaigns of their competition when you disagree with them? You think that might actually be an incumbent protection practice right there?
Yeah.
Imagine if we passed a law in Ohio that said Walmart gets to decide how much its competitors are allowed to spend on advertising in the public media. You think CVS would be able to do much advertising? Or Walgreens?
There's this disparity. When I saw a few tweets of people who were saying, Donald Trump is telling us to be austere and to save money. Meanwhile, he has fucking golden toilets and everything. Well, Elon Musk is telling us maybe we should save money because that will help us. And all these evil fucking billionaires are telling us, a good way to save money is to save energy. That's right. And they're all, well, you can't tell us this. You don't save money. You're spending billions because you have billions. Meanwhile, the government is telling them, we're going to force you to use less energy because it's going to save the planet. And that's the difference between giving someone good advice, for what it actually means, and giving someone the same advice based on lies. Like, using less energy isn't going to save the planet. It's not. The fucking planet's going to be fine. I mean, this fucking whole other thing. If you're gonna save energy, it should be for your own good. It should be because it's going to save you money, and frugality is its own virtue aside from anything else. Like, because it prevents you from being accustomed to using too much energy of any kind, really. And people should get on board with that. They should be like, yeah, I should save money. Regardless of the fact that people who can afford to spend money are spending money, I should still save money, no matter how poor I am. Because, I mean, that's how you get rich in the first place. That's how... in the meantime, the other billionaires, the fucking grifter ones, and especially the government, which is itself a trillionaire... there's no such thing as a trillionaire individually, but most world governments are trillionaires, and they're not individual humans, but they are machines.
They're corporations. They're trillionaire corporations.
Yeah, they're machine trillionaires, and they're here telling you, no, you should be frugal. Because it's going to save the world. In fact, we're going to force you to be frugal because it's going to save the world. And that's... like, it's not going to save the world. And yet they're forcing you to do it. This is bullshit on two different levels. Like, they're not telling you to do it for your own good. They're telling it to you because of some... nonsense is going to convince you that you're some fucking environmental freedom fighter who's going to save the planet, even though the planet's going to be fucking fine. And meanwhile, they're not even asking you, they're not even advising you to be frugal. They're going, yeah, no, we're going to fucking steal all your money to force you to be frugal. And these fucking dickheads are like, no, that's fine. Yeah, that's good. Everyone should be on board with this. And anyone who's not on board with it is a fucking Nazi or a fascist. Shit. Oh, there are so many layers of this clown world that it drives me to drink.
Well, the sad thing is they have successfully convinced people that money is something that it is not. Right? All currency is, of any kind, is a placeholder. It doesn't represent anything else, right? You spend the thing that everybody has the same amount of to get it. Right? Nobody has more minutes in their day. Everybody has a 24-hour day. And when that's up, it's the next day. It's not the same day anymore. And everybody needs pretty close to the same amount of sleep, the same amount of food, and time to eat, downtime from working. The only difference between people is, how much of that placeholder they can command for the labor that they do during their non-downtime, during their uptime. And that depends on a whole set of factors. How difficult your labor is, how dangerous it is, how many people can do it, how badly people need it to be done. More people are willing to give you more placeholder for your labor if most people aren't smart enough to do that labor and they have to pay you because there isn't somebody else to do it. Or most people aren't tough enough to do your labor, so they have to pay you because there isn't somebody else to do it, or it's too scary or too dirty, and they just don't want it. They'd really rather you do that, or if it took you a long time to learn how to do it, things like that, and of course, how much other people's labor you have to invest in to get the materials you need to do your labor. factors in, things like that, right? How much it costs other people, and how much you end up with at the end of the day depends on the wisdom of your labor choices and your capacity for trade. And that's it. It's that simple when it comes to how much money people end up with. But the other thing is, because that's all it is, it's a placeholder. And when you spend that placeholder, what you are doing is you are paying for other people's time to do things that you don't want to spend your time doing. I pay farmers to grow my food by giving my money to the grocery store for that food, knowing the grocery store is going to give it to the distributors who are going to give it to the farmers. Right? And that's the way that works. And obviously that's a little oversimplified. There's a lot more middlemen than that. And sure, I could grow my own food. But I can have more placeholder value from my labor if I pay somebody else to do that and focus on the labor I do. And then I can also spend that placeholder money for other things that I don't want to spend time on. I don't want to spend time sewing my own clothes. I don't want to build, well, I kind of do want to build my own car, but that's a whole different story. I really can't build my own car and do the other things I want to do.
You have an ambulance. You don't need a car.
Yeah, I know. That's true. We did just purchase a decommissioned ambulance. But if you want to learn more about that, you need to go to Feed the Badger and find out how to join in on the patron-only after shows for HBR Talk, where I spend much more time talking about the ambulance. But if you want to know a little bit about the United States, that ambulance came from Kansas, so the first thing we had to do is replace the windshield. But in any case, yeah, it would still be really fascinating to build my own car, but I don't know that I have the skill and the talent necessary to make it street worthy. And the whole point would be to have something that I built that I could drive, and if that's not going to happen, then I would be wasting my placeholder earning capacity doing that. So yeah, essentially, if you don't want to be like, as David Loboy pointed out, a Neolithic subsistence farmer, you use placeholder or money to pay for other people's time and other people's labor, other people's expertise, other people's intelligence, and so on, other people's wisdom. But your so-called betters that want you to become part of a communist system want you to believe that that is a bad way of doing things, that it's theft if you voluntarily trade your labor to get placeholder money, placeholder currency for your time, your labor, your intelligence, your wisdom, and so on, your expertise, and then spend some of it to get a variety of different things that you wouldn't have time to do for yourself in a given day, and your life is easier. That's theft. You're being ripped off, and you're ripping other people off, according to these folks. They hate that. But in the meantime, yeah, they do it, and most of the time, the people who are mad at you for that, for living that way, not only do they live that way, but they live that way so effectively that they have so optimized their ability to obtain that placeholder that they have way, way more of it than is necessary to create sustainable, secure living for them. They have disposable placeholder. And their disposable placeholder, the way the economy works, is if they hoard that disposable placeholder, it takes away from every individual who is trying to earn placeholder by selling things or services or a combination of both. Right? And so it isn't a bad thing when one of them buys a gold toilet, because it gives somebody else the opportunity to earn placeholder by creating and transporting and installing and maintaining a gold toilet. It gives people the opportunity to earn placeholder by mining gold. It gives people the opportunity to earn placeholder by figuring out how to make a toilet work, even if it's made out of a very, very soft metal instead of porcelain, which seems like it would be problematic to me, but to each their own. Also, can you imagine sitting on that in New York during a nor'easter?
That thing's got to be cold. What the hell? There's no way.
They need to have like a heater to keep the toilet, keep your ass from freezing to the toilet.
Right.
I don't like sitting on porcelain in Ohio in the autumn. So, like, come on, guys. But yeah, the idea that there's some immorality toward having that placeholder for your labor and your time spent and your expertise and how necessary what you're doing is and how hard it is to get somebody else to do it and so on, so that you can diversify your ability to get things and get services from other people so that you don't have to do everything yourself for yourself. And you actually have downtime, which is something that, you know, the Neolithic subsistence farmers did not have downtime, okay? They worked all day, and they slept all night, and they got up the next day, and they worked all day again. Very little downtime. Like you get to read a book. If books had existed, they didn't. They wouldn't have had to. You get to go. You could be an entertainer for a living if you're good at it, and very, very few people can say that. But fewer can say that in an environment where people have to do everything for themselves and nobody has time for entertainment.
We're starting to dread a certain future when people rely on AI for their information. But once upon a time, nobody had books, and they relied entirely on oral information. They just talked to each other. Like they didn't have to remember all these graphic symbols on these pieces of pulped wood. And they were really, really good at talking to each other, because that was the only kind of communication they had.
Had to be.
People often assume that people in the past were really stupid, but in all likelihood, they were extremely orally efficient. Now that sounds like an innuendo, but it's not. I mean, they were probably much better at talking than we are. Because, like I say,
Besides, it's an innuendo.
In your endo. But, you know.
Yeah. Well, and that is the point. Like, you would be better at the things that you had to do. It's just that you would only have time for the things that you had to do. Now we have time for things we want to do. Right? Yeah, and yeah, Richard Beer says it's probably gilded porcelain. I hope so. Can you imagine how much that sucker would weigh? Imagine being the guy that has to handle the transfer of that from the manufacturing system to the truck, handle the forklift. Like, you gotta hope that it doesn't counterbalance the forklift. Gold is heavy. Like, it's incredibly heavy. But yeah. So I mean, this is why you should be suspicious of the elites, right? They tell you it's immoral and you're being taken advantage of when you engage in a system that actually creates luxury for you. In this country, in my country, in Lauren's country, we can have simultaneous designation of poverty where we're labeled poor by our government and by the rest of society, and have not only enough clothing to wear, enough food to eat, a roof over your head, shoes. Where there are places in the world where if you're poor, shoes are not a thing in your home. You don't have shoes if you don't make them yourself, right? But you can have a car and be considered poor. You can have an entertainment system in your house, a television, a video game system, and be considered poor, be eligible for public assistance. You can have pets, animals living with you that you're not going to eat and that don't do any work, and be considered poor. You could pay for their food and afford your own food and buy drugs or cigarettes, which are technically drugs. Coffee is a drug, alcohol. You can have money for those things and still be considered poor. You can have a heat in your house from a utility system. You don't have to burn stuff to heat your house and still be considered poor, right? In our first world nation, our line for poverty is so much higher because we have that placeholder and a system designed around using that placeholder instead of straight up trade or doing everything yourself. But yet you're being told that the existence of that, the fact that it gets used to pay for your labor, and that an investor can make money off of the money that they've invested without adding labor to it because they have purchased so much labor and so on, that's somehow immoral, when it is that system that has raised the overall economy by putting money back into the economy and creating more ways that different people can use their labor, their expertise, their skills, their talents, their intelligence, their wisdom, their creativity, their character to gain placeholder without being limited to a small set of methods for obtaining it. And then they can choose from a broad variety of ways to spend that placeholder to get conditions, services, items, and so on that they want in their lives. It's you're a victim of that, guys. You're a victim of that luxury, that plentiful situation. You're a victim of being part of a nation so wealthy that you can have living conditions that would be considered wealthy in poor countries and be considered poor in this country. Just think about that. To be told that, and to be told that you would be better off if the entire country were stripped of that system, so that it was like the third world country where poverty means not having enough to eat, not having shoes, not having a roof over your head, not having heat, not having a cool environment to go into in the summertime. Like air conditioning, first world problems. Really poor countries, yeah. Richard Bierre points out really poor has no toilets. In a country, a third world country that doesn't have indoor plumbing. People think you're poor now if you don't have an internet connection in your home.
Yeah.
Or if the internet connections in your area are not incredibly reliable. If you don't have 5G. I remember when you used to be poor if you were still on a party line.
When you were poor, when you didn't have satellite television.
Yep. Yep. I remember when you were poor if you didn't have a second car. Right? I mean, you can be now. Poor people have multiple junk cars in their yard. But yeah, so this is like my point here is these people lie to you about the most fundamental things. They tell you that you are a victim of things that you benefit from, and that they want to rescue you from those things so that you can benefit from what real poverty is like in third world countries, because that would be better for you. Meredith G gave us $5 and said, HBR Talk 382, honey for the Badgers. The BS about democratic reform is like declaration of sentiment. Congressional leadership already control campaign funding to the point where that when a favor candidate loses a primary, the party will literally demand the winner fire all the people who help the winner get through the primary and hire the consultants that will cause them to lose in general. The more you know. Well, or they do what the Democrats did when they wanted Hillary to run, or was it Biden? And Bernie Sanders actually won the primary, and they put their candidate in instead anyway. They like, no, we don't want Bernie Sanders. We want because Bernie is more openly socialistic, whereas Biden and Hillary tried to at least be semi-covert in their socialism. They were the same. All three of those candidates were the same. Kamala Harris was the same. They all have the same goals. Bernie just doesn't know how to shut up about them. He says the quiet part out loud. Right. Last independent thinker says, I grew up in a town, or with no town water, only tank water, and what was trucked in, no hot water. And we still had those wind-up phones that went to the exchange. Yeah, the ones you see in the old movies where they have to crank it to make it work. My dad's house, when he was young, had something called a cistern. Not to be confused with brethren. They're not the same. A cistern is a big tank, like what Last Independent was talking about. And it catches rainwater, and you use it for gray water. So you wash dishes with it, you wash your clothes with it, you might even shower with it. They did. And it comes through. If you don't have a means of heating it, it's cold. You get a cold shower, you wash your clothes in cold water, you wash your dishes in cold water. And your cleaning method is your soap, which a lot of times was lye soap. So it's a lot more harsh than the soap that you're using today. And I had friends growing up that they bought water for drinking because on their farms, all they had was well water. If something happens to your well, you're fucked. Right? If you want to do laundry, you haul up some well water. If you, and they some of them had cisterns, so that they could catch rainwater for stuff like that. And if it didn't rain for a long time, you didn't have water in the cistern. You couldn't use it. You had to haul up water from the well, or you had to buy water. You had to have it trucked in. There are places that didn't have, like in the city and in towns, you have gas lines, so you can get natural gas piped to your house if you want to run your furnace and your water heater and stuff like that. But out in the country, that wasn't necessarily the case until those systems were built. There's probably still people that don't have gas lines. The apartment I live in, we don't have gas. Everything's electric. And on one side, if the power goes out, that means you have no heat. But on the other side, your house doesn't blow up because they haven't been reading the meter for 6 months and they don't know there's a leak. And you can't get a basement full of carbon monoxide and a spark goes off and the whole place. There's been multiple house explosions in Ohio from that And almost every single time you find out they have the gas company hasn't been reading the meter, and if they had been, they would have known there was a leak. But in a couple of those instances, the individual owner of the home had interfered with the way that the gas comes in to try to bypass the meter. So it's not every single instance, right? And yeah, out in the country, there's a lot of propane. People might have a great big tank on their farm, and a truck comes by, and they subscribe essentially to it. So yeah, there's a lot of people that grew up without some of the privileges that we're used to. Like, but you can choose to move to a city. You can choose to live on a farm, and we have the luxury in this country of moving around, and nobody's going to stop us. There are parts of the city that you don't want to live if you're the wrong color. I mean, we do have that war going on, and a lot of that is manufactured by these same people. But there isn't some law that says that if you grew up on a farm in Nebraska, that you can't move to Omaha and live with all the luxuries you want that are available in a city. And there's no law that says that if you grew up in the middle of the city and you had all those luxuries, you can't give them up and go off-grid out in the country either. Yet. But they're working on that part. So what do they want to do? They want to change your House of Representatives. So we just talked a little bit ago about how important it is that they have that balance, that the individual voters' representatives can't just run roughshod over the states and the different local cultures by imposing urban culture on the entire rural majority of the country. Most of, if you look at the map of the United States and you look at where the urban centers are versus where the rural population lives, the overwhelming majority of the land is rural, not urban. And there are a lot of things that can be done at the local level in urban centers and can be done the urban way without imposing the urban way on farmers in small towns and villages and so on. But what they want to do is increase the size of the House of Representatives. And they claim that it's because the population has grown. But the fact is, it's grown, slowly over time, and they're wanting to make it sudden. They're not wanting to balance that out with any evolution to ensure equal opportunity for the states. So they're going to give a history of how the population has expanded and the number of people per representative has grown. But at the same time, what they're omitting is the fact that the reason that the representatives haven't grown is because they're trying to keep a debate possible. You can have a debate in a room full of a few dozen people, a couple hundred people even. But, if you triple the size of the House of Representatives, it becomes harder and harder to debate. Harder and harder for them to interact with each other and make decisions and come to agreements and so on. And you do end up in a situation where the proportion ends up being like it was during that teacher union fight. So what they're essentially trying to do is give the urban populations the ability to override the rural populations in the House of Representatives. Then the other thing that I wanted to make sure that we talked about tonight is ranked choice voting, which they want to do. They want to make this how the president is elected, how the House and Senate are elected, how your governor and your state House and your state Senate are elected. They want all those positions to be elected by ranked choice votings. Right? So for people who don't know what that is, let's see. I actually looked this up. It looks like I closed the tab. Okay, so essentially ranked choice voting, what they do is, let's say you have 6 candidates running for a political office. And they'll say, all right, you have the Democrats, the Republicans, the Green Party, the Communist Party, which those are 2 versions of the same party, which is the same as the Democrat Party. Everybody that's not Republican is pretty much communist. But you have 6 different parties, in the election, and annually maybe 40-some% of the vote goes to the favored party, and 30 to 40% of the vote goes to the second choice, and the rest is divided by the other 4 candidates. And that happens almost every year in the presidential elections, whereas in the smaller elections, you might see other parties. The independent party sometimes gets somebody in. Once in a blue moon, you get a communist or Green Party person elected, and so on. But imagine if you went to the poll and instead of you voting for one person for president, you had to state your top 3 choices. Your first choice, your second choice, your third choice. And the race is between, somebody whose ideals fit yours perfectly, and 5 people whose ideals have complete polar opposition to yours. Who's your second choice? Who is your second choice in that situation? Right? And why is that important? Because in that election, then when they go to count the votes, what they're going to do is if your first choice isn't the top choice, it's the bottom choice gets dumped. That choice doesn't count. So now maybe you voted for the Green Party for whatever reason. Right? Your top choice just got dumped. What's your second choice? Maybe you voted second for the popular candidate. Or maybe you voted second for the candidate that got second place in the popular vote. That candidate now gets your vote. They redistribute your vote to that candidate because your candidate was guaranteed to lose. That makes sense? And then so in that process, it's possible for enough people, like if you have this top 6 and maybe the bottom 3 all end up getting eliminated because almost nobody voted for them. All those votes get redistributed, and maybe that bottom 3 all liked the second place candidate. If the race is close, that can push the second place candidate to the first place, and that person can win. Even though in the popular vote, the other person was the first choice of most people. Then the other thing is if your ballot, if all you vote for is your favorite candidate and you don't have a second choice, or your second and your third choices all got eliminated, your ballot just isn't counted at all. Nobody hears how many people voted for your candidate. Right? So there's been some criticisms of this, one of which is that it can result in a lot of people's votes just getting dumped. So, for instance, like the spoiler effect happened, I want to say there have been a couple of places where it's been a problem. There we go. New York, 2021 Democratic mayoral primary, nearly 15% of ballots, about 140,000 were eliminated, were exhausted. In Maine's 2018 congressional race, 8,000 were discarded. One San Francisco race, more ballots were discarded than counted. Literally, they threw out more votes than they counted. So what does that do? It gives the establishment control over who gets elected, essentially. It creates this...
as if they didn't already have it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It opens a pathway for them to cheat.
Yeah.
Right. In Alaska's 2022 special election, Republican candidates received 60% of first-round votes, yet a Democrat won after redistribution.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So this isn't a more accurate way of voting. It isn't a better way of letting the people decide who is going to be their leader. What it is a way for the elite to disguise vote manipulation. It provides cover for vote manipulation. The complexity of the system makes audits damn near impossible. Creates the risk that they can hide vote manipulation, undetected errors. Like in an Oklahoma school board election, a programming error, totally just a mistake, guys, led to the wrong candidate being declared the winner. It doesn't eliminate the spoiler effect, may even exacerbate it, right? Make it worse, where voters rank a less preferred but more viable candidate higher to avoid helping their least favored candidate win. So they like, you say you're looking at Trump versus Hillary and 5 other candidates. You might make one of those other candidates a higher rank because you think Trump or Hillary is the most evil person in the world, whichever one you hate, is the most evil person in the world, and you just cannot abide the idea that they might win.
Hillary.
Yeah.
Sorry, just I'm casting my vote now.
Yeah, I vote no on this. I think we shouldn't do this.
Well, no.
Yeah.
But
so 5 states have made this type of system actually illegal. Out of the 50, 10% of the states has already outlawed this, citing multiple concerns. That there's quite a bit of leeway for error and manipulation in this. Right? This is one of the things that they want to do. They want to make sure that you have the least possible opportunity of evaluating whether or not the election was run fairly, because, the last 8 years, what we discovered was when the election is run fairly, the people's choice turns out to be different than the establishment's choice. And when the establishment manipulates the election to cure that problem, to heal the system so that they get their choice, in their minds, they're fixing democracy. The people get upset because they can tell that their say was overridden and they act up. Right? They protest, and you can't have that. You can't have people getting mad that you told them you were going to listen to them, and then you didn't.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to hide the fact that you're not listening. You have to not listen more sneakily.
Yes.
This one's a little sneaky too. So, essentially, if you're in a more densely populated area, they want extra members. Whereas there are some districts that get a member even though their population isn't big enough. Which, with the idea being that there shouldn't be people who just aren't represented at all. And there also shouldn't be population density shouldn't give one small area a significant amount of control over what happens in the rest of the country. Because you end up with a situation where the people of some section of a city get to vote that the people of some other state have to give up income from, say, the oil that's under their state to fund free housing for the people of that city. Like, we just want to profiteer off of these people's labor. We're going to vote for that, and they shouldn't be able to override us because there's more of us than there are of them. Amend or repeal and replace the 1967 law that mandates single member districts for the House. So, yeah. What they want, multiple member districts. Yeah. Support adoption through state legislation of independent citizen redistricting commissions in all 50 states. So essentially what they want there, and this is something that's been talked about in Texas recently too. Right now there's a process for gerrymandering that allows the parties their say through a system that gives the government input. What they want to do is take citizens that claim to be independent and put them in charge. So, we'll take your word for it that you're not biased toward Republican or Democrat. Or perhaps we'll take 5 Republicans and 5 Democrats and 5 people who are not affiliated with either party. But notice there's like 6 different prominent political parties in the country. Where's the other representation? So it's not really changing anything. It's just taking it from the existing model to a new gerrymandering model that there's less oversight and quite a bit more ability to hide one's biases. And this time they're going to provide federal funding for these processes. Instead of allowing, say, you to elect people to do it, they're just going to appoint people. And guess who gets to appoint them, by the way? Do you think maybe the public gets to elect those people? No.
Of course not. Of course not. My God.
Yeah. Amend the Constitution to authorize the regulation of election contributions and spending to eliminate undue influence of money in our political system and to protect the rights of all Americans to free speech, political participation, and meaningful representation in government. Sounds good again when they say it, right? But what they're talking about, I believe the bill was McCain-Feingold or Feinstein. I think it was Feinstein. Dianne Feinstein and John McCain introduced this bill that limited individual contributions and limited group contributions. So it was intended, according to them, to keep Bill Gates from buying an election by just funneling a bunch of money into a candidate's. It was Feingold. I was wrong. Okay. But to keep, like somebody like Bill Gates from just funneling a bunch of money into somebody's campaign, right? But what it did was,
or George Soros,
right?
Who we
right?
know actually this is just so fucking backwards. What it does is give them or allow them to find different ways to actually do the thing that they say that they're not supposed to do.
Yep.
It's just unbelievable, and nobody bats an eye when the people like George Soros will do something like this. But we sent Dinesh D'Souza went to jail for what was it? It was some stupid amount, like some not a huge amount of money that
Yeah.
he donated, and he went to jail. And listen, I listen. If the laws are the laws, I'm fine with that being the law. However, when they just look the other way, when the other side does it, it just it drives me insane.
Yeah, like when Rosie O'Donnell did it.
Yes.
Because every time she got nervous, she she donated to the Democrat Party.
Yeah.
But the reality is that there are different ways that people do this, right? So you have you rich guys like Bill Gates or George Soros or any other rich guy. Donald Trump might donate to a candidate. Okay, they're donating. But some farm co-op in Ohio can all get together as a group, raise money, and donate.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in a workplace that has a union, your union donates.
Mm-hmm.
They donate from the money that you pay as dues.
Their union
And
dues, yeah.
even if you opt out, the way they handle that is more of your money goes to pay for operations, and they cut the amount of money that other people are paying for operations, and they still send the candidate the same amount of money.
Yeah.
So they just say which money is going where. And technically, on paper, they haven't taken your money out of your pocket and donated to a candidate that's going to vote against your interests. But in reality, they have.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so when they talk about campaign finance and they focus on individual donors, what they are essentially doing is preventing people who have the ability to increase their income and work together as donors from counteracting union donations and other big organizational donations. But if they focus on those big organizational donations, then they also go after the farming co-ops and so on.
Mm-hmm.
If they stayed out of it and all they do is say, all right, you have to disclose whose donations paid for what and how much you accepted from whom, and leave it at that. And you have to make it public. So say 90% of candidate A's campaign money has come from George Soros, and 90% of candidate B's campaign money came from the AFL-CIO. 90% of candidate C's money came from individual donors donating their drops in a bucket until they filled the bucket. It gives you an idea as a voter what the candidates' financially motivated biases are. Who are they beholden to? And if you're going to pick somebody and you feel like if your only two choices are George Soros versus AFL-CIO, all right, I'm voting for the union in that one. I don't like Soros. I don't trust him. I know what he's thinking, and I don't want that. Right? The union's a lesser of two evils. But if you have big organization like a union, rich guy, and the general public, then I'm thinking, maybe the guy who's going to be biased more toward the general public is my guy. And so that would influence people's vote. But instead, what they want is to control the candidate's ability to buy advertising by saying, well, you can't donate. You can't give this candidate money.
Mm-hmm.
Even if everybody knows you did it. Even if it's going to be a public thing, you still can't do it. You don't get to have your say. You can't support putting signs in people's yards and buying 30-second spaces on advertising platforms so that the candidate can say, this is what I'm going to do when I get into office. Right? So what happens? Soros doesn't suffer. What can he do? He can create a website or a whole bunch of websites, a whole bunch of little sub-organizations, and those organizations can then give money to other organizations, and those organizations can arrange riots in cities all over the country in protest of the candidate he doesn't like.
Exactly. How this pile of bricks get here? Oh my God.
Right?
Yeah, it's just unbelievable,
And because there's no receipt tracing that pile of bricks directly to George Soros, he has plausible deniability. No, this is the people expressing their opinion. Nobody paid these protesters. It's what they really think. A lot of people hate Trump and they're very angry that he won.
Yeah.
How the fuck did he win then?
Right.
Why didn't they vote against him? Nope, we have to make sure that Americans cannot participate in the political system by putting their money where their mouth is.
Yep.
George Soros can also fund organizations that then pay people to go all over Ohio and get signatures on petitions to put abortion into our Constitution. And then hold an election after getting it changed so that they barely need a majority to make it a constitutional amendment that abortion must always be legal in Ohio. Which he did, and they did, and they won, and it is now a constitutional amendment in Ohio that abortion will always be legal here. Ohio will not prosecute abortion clinics or their owners or their clinicians or anybody involved for providing abortion, even if there's in the future a federal law that outlaws it. The feds would have to go after those people because Ohio can't. Even if there's something that happens in the future where they conclusively find a way to communicate with fetuses in gestation, and conclusively prove that abortion advocates are lying about how the brain develops in gestation, Ohio still can't do anything about it because it's in our Constitution. Right? So, we have less power under the laws that these people want to support candidates directly, but rich people can still manipulate our political system. They just do it without direct support. What else they want to do? Campaign finance disclosure laws. All right, so that I am for campaign finance disclosure laws. The one caveat is that they should have, it should be a higher penalty if you're caught attacking someone for donating to a campaign than if you just burglarize them on the street. Because you're violating two things. You're violating that individual's right, and you're also violating the American principle of free elections. Yeah. So you're engaging in election interference. If you're caught trying to intimidate voters by using any type of like violence, threat to their employment status, any type of public shaming, oh, this person supported this candidate, we're going to publish it in the local newspaper and embarrass them. We're going to shame them for it. We're going to pressure their employer to fire them, pressure their school to kick them out, pressure whatever, socially isolate them, any such thing. Any measures you take to punish someone for supporting a candidate should be punishable under the law. Like, yep, they can't hide the fact that they did it. Nope, you can't punish them for it because it's supposed to be a free and fair election. And you don't have to agree with them, but you're not allowed to take away their right to do that.
Yeah, I agree with that.
We should all know but they won't do that. They'll pass those disclosure laws, but then they'll turn around and say, well, free speech has consequences. If you donate to Donald Trump and somebody comes to your house and burns it down, that's just a consequence.
Yeah.
Maybe you shouldn't have donated.
Upside down situation we are in right now.
Yep. And there's another thing too. Right, Fred's part of the retail union. I can't remember what it's called. Fred works at CVS, and CVS is a unionized company. So the union that Fred has to pay membership dues to, that union supports the Democrat candidate, and Fred's name gets attached to that. But Fred is a registered Republican, been a registered Republican all his life, votes Republican, and personally wants to donate money to a Republican candidate. Does he face on the job discrimination when that comes out? Mm-hmm. Does the state try to stop him because he's already donated to a Democrat? How does that work? So, like, these laws need to have a level of complexity that prevents penalizing citizens for participating in the process, and that stops the state and the unions and any other organizational donors, like besides the unions, because they're not the only ones, any other authoritative controllers of the lives of people, like whether or not you have access to a job, whether or not you have access to a school, whether or not you have access to public services, and so on, from applying penalties because you donated, or forcing you to donate against your will, or any other such behavior, preventing you from donating to who you wanted to donate to because the organization that you're part of donated against your interests. That needs to be part of it.
Imagine if they did anything like this with donating to like churches, right?
Yeah.
The people would be in an uproar, an absolute fucking uproar.
You betcha.
It's amazing that these people even have the audacity to say that this is something that they want to implement. I mean, I wish more people paid attention to politics, because then they would realize this for what it is and
Yeah.
shut it down. You know, this
Yeah.
is ridiculous. You do not. I go to work 40 hours a week. I earn my money. You do not get to tell me where I can and cannot spend that money. You know, and if I want to donate to a certain campaign, then number one, it's none of your business. You know, number two, it should have no bearing on my employment or anything. It shouldn't, you know, negate me from society because you don't like where I put my money towards, you know. It's just it's mind blowing. It's mind blowing that more people are not paying attention to this
Yeah.
and
It is.
speaking up and saying something about it, you know, and pushing back against this because it's ridiculous. I say ridiculous all the time. It's disgusting. I say disgusting all the time, but it is all of those things.
It is. It really is. So what we've seen here so far, they want to control the elected bodies
Mhm.
that decide the laws, right? They want to make it so that they can stack the House of Representatives
Mhm.
in their favor, and in the favor of urban areas, places where they can more easily control the school systems, more easily create a level of lack of information among the voters, and so on. Not that all urban voters are ignorant. You just have to work harder to overcome what government controlled information systems are doing to you. It takes effort. It takes more effort to not be ignorant in the city than it does to not be ignorant in the country. You would think the opposite would be true, right? Based on per capita access to local libraries from walking distance from your home, but that's not the case. You know, so they want to control that. They want to control funding, and which directly controls communications from your representatives. They want to control how you vote, like the method by which you vote, and therefore make it more easily controllable what the outcome of the election is. They
Mhm.
want to insist on controlling how you support your candidates. And now they're talking about passing clean election laws for federal, state, local elections through mechanisms such as public matching donation systems and democracy vouchers, which amplify the power of small donors. So if their candidate isn't getting the money and support that they think their candidate should have, they want to use the tax dollars of people who donated to their opponents to give them equal communication power.
God.
So let's say,
How is this democracy again?
yeah, let's say you have a candidate like Trump with the popularity of Elvis, but who isn't necessarily as polarizing as Trump. And it's not that Trump himself is polarizing; it's that the media's attitude toward him has been. But let's say that doesn't happen. That the media fails at polarizing the country in regard to this candidate. This is the Elvis of candidates, the Michael Jackson of candidates, right? And so this individual gets a huge amount of campaign donations from individual voters, all donating the max that they can afford and within the law that they're allowed. Organizations that would normally donate to the establishment candidate, they donate to this candidate because the candidate speaks to their interests and so on, and the candidate has a significant war chest as a result, and the other candidate can't build a war chest because nobody likes him and nobody wants to donate any money to him. So all the people who donated already, they've already given money to the candidate they support. Along comes Uncle Sam and says, whoa, wait a minute. Well, I've got money that you gave me, and I'm going to counteract your donations by giving some of your money that you gave me, gave as in I came to you and said, if you don't give me this money, I'm going to pull out a gun and shoot you with it. Gave me. I'm going to give it to the candidate you don't like and didn't donate to.
Mm.
Is that in the interest of the voters?
Of course not. Well, not the voters who would vote for their candidates. But it's just, my God.
We're going to override this candidate's popularity by skimming off of the top of what we have told people we're going to spend building roads for them.
Mm-hmm.
Gee, the Pete. Democracy vouchers. Citizens receive campaign donation vouchers that they can give to their preferred candidate and be redeemed as cash. So at least that one, they're pretending that they're putting control over it in the hands of the people, right? Except, why can't you donate your own money?
Yeah.
So again, it's giving people the ability to override the donations of other people. We're going to just take their money, give it to you, and then you can donate it to who you want. Or they want the government to just fully control financing of campaigns. So no campaign donations from the public. Both candidates get an equal war chest from the taxpayers. And it doesn't matter if one of them is lying because there's no truth in advertising laws for campaigns. So if your candidate falsely advertises something, you don't have any recourse as a consumer, as a voter.
So much democracy. It's wonderful. And this is why we don't fucking live in a democracy. We live in a republic.
Yeah.
God,
Yeah.
why can't they? Well, it's not why they can't understand this. They do understand this. They just want to circumvent the rules to get their people in. And, my God.
And then what are they going to do? Term limits for Supreme Court justices. Why? Not because they're doing a bad job in their old age. Not because they become outdated, right? The Constitution is not something that gets outdated. But because they don't want a situation where one president gets to appoint multiple judges, even though there are checks and balances on how that appointment takes place. They don't want a situation where a judge they don't like is in there for a lifetime. They don't want essentially the people's choices of who gets in there based on who they choose to potentially appoint. Like when we voted for Trump, we all knew that there was this possibility that he might be appointing multiple judges.
Yeah.
That wasn't a mystery. Like it wasn't shock and a surprise. In fact, many of us were hoping for it.
I mean, but meanwhile, Joe Biden gets to sit in Congress for half a century. This man has been, but no. It's the judges, the people who actually study the laws of this country and know what the hell they're talking about and have to pass
what's constitutional.
No. They can't be around because some of them might, rule in a way that I don't like. Come on.
You know who I think should have term limits?
Who?
Bureaucrats in the
Yeah.
government.
Does
Yeah.
Mitch McConnell still have a job? Is Mitch McConnell still employed in the federal government?
Is he still alive?
Apparently.
There's two types of term limits I'd introduce. One of them is if you are a bureaucrat in a government department or agency or office, you get a limited number of years, and then you have to go back to the public sector, the private sector, whatever. That's the first one. The second one is if you've served out your full term as a bureaucrat, you cannot then, run for office and become a congressman or senator or president or anything like that until there's been a period of time in between your government service and your time in office. You can't go from being the CEO of Pfizer or some other high-ranking official at Pfizer and then become a bureaucrat at the Food and Drug Administration.
Oh my God,
Right.
the swap is unbelievable. The amount of times these people just change positions from one company to another and then into the government.
Yep.
How long was Nancy What's-Her-Face?
Nancy Pelosi?
Nancy Pelosi in the government. It was something like 50 years, wasn't it? 'Cause
Yeah.
she was around
Yeah.
since the fucking John Kennedy days.
Yeah.
Imagine if she had term limits, if she had to fuck off after 8 years. Imagine how much bullshit you wouldn't have had to go through. Not to mention,
Although at least she had to run for office.
At least.
Which like the head of the Food and Drug Administration doesn't.
Yeah.
And it's not just that the people in various offices within the Food and Drug Administration that control how your business operates in relation to the government, what rules apply, what rules are enforced, and so on. They don't have to run for office. Nobody votes for them. Right? The public doesn't even get told how they're doing their jobs. And that goes all the way down to local bureaucracy, by the way. There was a company that I worked for that started having a kitchen and some food assembly service, essentially. I used a Turbo Chef oven, which is a glorified microwave oven that also has conventional oven heat. It's got a 500-degree temperature, and it also has convection heat, which means the heat is moved using air currents inside to ensure that it'll be balanced throughout the inside of the. And then microwaves are also used to speed up the heating process. And it all you do is you put the filling of a sandwich, whatever type of meat you're putting in, whether it's cheeseburgers, like the burger patties for cheeseburgers, or the chicken patties for chicken sandwiches and stuff like that, or pizzas or whatever you're cooking in there. You put those in there for a short amount of time, and you have pre-programmed buttons to push. So it's not real cooking. Right? This button says pizza, you hit pizza, and you hit how many are in there, and it does it automatically. Or as my husband likes to say, automagic. And then you pull them out, and you have assembled. You have to put the sandwich together, or you have to put the pizza in the pizza box. It's really, a gas station employee can do this. Right? You don't have to be a chef, so it wasn't anything fancy, right? But it still has to be clean, because even if you're irradiating the food, even if it's being cooked in a 500-degree environment, even if it was already cooked once and you're cooking it a second time, there is still ample opportunity for you to introduce salmonella poisoning, listeria, botulism, all manner of nasty-ass things that nobody wants in their body. And to avoid that, you have standards and practices that are known standards and practices to follow in order to prevent bacteria from being introduced into the food and bacteria from surviving on the food. It's food poisoning is kind of a numbers game. You just want to make sure that there's not enough on there alive that your body can't overcome it with your body's defenses. But there's a lot that goes into. They have figured out a lot about how to prevent bacteria from getting into your food. For instance, hand washing, just like in medicine, and they have some very interesting stipulations, like when you wash your hands, you walk over to the sink, your hands are dirty. And whatever's on your hands that you don't want to get on things that you're going to touch after you wash your hands is on there when you turn on the faucet. So if you have a faucet that you have to grab with your dirty hands to turn it on, and then you wash your hands, and then in order to turn off the water, you have to grab that faucet that you just got dirty with your dirty hands, you are now recontaminating your hands, which kind of defeats the purpose of washing them, especially if you just touched raw chicken or raw fish or something like that, right? Something that has salmonella, or listeria or any other type of nasty, germy death sitting in it. And so the health department, when they come in and they look at your kitchen, they want to see a hands-free, a grip-free means of turning your faucets on. And it's nice if you have something that just automatically turns on, but if you have to have handles, you have to be able to manipulate them with your arm, your wrist, your elbow, and you shouldn't have to grab them with your hands to manipulate them. So usually that means the type that has a little wing sticking off instead of a grip. Right? And if you don't have the right one, that's some points off of your score. They can suggest that you really need to replace those, right? And there's a whole bunch of little things like that. If you have a freezer in there, it's got to have wheels on the bottom because you got to be able to move that freezer so you can sweep and mop underneath and then put it back. Because otherwise you can get a buildup of dust and dirt, and that can get in the food. All kinds of little things like that. What types of gloves you have, how much hand sanitizer, how available the hand sanitizer is, where it is in relation to the food and the sink and so on. All kinds of stuff. What your personal protective equipment is. Every single thing. You go in there, when they come in there, they come in with a clipboard that practically has a book on it that they have to check off little boxes. And so this organization, this company, they had hundreds of stores in the area where they were starting this food program. And we had gotten the okay to start on a particular day at a particular time. This is when you can start cooking and serving the food. Not a minute before. Everything will be ready then. This is what you have to accomplish prior to that. And, the day before they come through and they take off all their boxes, okay, you've done everything you're supposed to do, right? So everything was great. Day of, one store out of the hundreds started like 8 hours early. And they offended the gods at the health department. How dare you? How dare you start 8 hours early? We said X o'clock. You said Y o'clock. We are the authority. Guess what we're going to do? So they sent them back. Every evaluator, right, comes back to the stores that they had looked at before and went through, and every place where they had said, well, this is good enough. It doesn't actually meet the standard, but it's so close that we're not going to dicker over it. They dickered the fuck out of everything. And at our store, where they had okayed a whole bunch of things that were borderline. And I didn't know this until afterward. Whole bunch of things that were like, well, you know, you don't have a full 6 feet of open space in front of your electrical panels, but somebody can get to them with the fire extinguisher, and it is close, so we'll let that slide, right? Just little things like that. They unchecked all of those boxes, gave us 24 hours to fix it. On our paperwork about our kitchen, they wrote, "Clean this whole room." Like it was, if it was that bad 48 hours prior, and they didn't write that on there, but they did because they were offended. That tells you something, right?
Yeah.
And I got 8 hours of overtime out of that because they basically said, okay, who's the OCD person? Oh, that's Hannah. All right, let's stick Hannah on that room. And I did. I cleaned that whole room. And this is the worst part. Okay, I get done. I just get done. I had initially they gave me like 3 or 4 hours, and I had it sparkling. It like the Iron Chef would have been like, yeah, I can cook in here. And the soda guy came in, the pop guy, that brings the syrup in the bag in the boxes for the soda system. And he does a couple of different things. One of them has to do with calibrating the R2 unit, which is where the R2 unit in Star Wars got its name, I'm pretty sure. Which it's the carbon dioxide insertion that makes the pop fizzy, basically. And he fucked something up. I don't know what he did, but it caused an explosion of cola syrup.
Oh my god!
That reached from one end of the room to the other, covered from head to toe. The man was dripping. Like, he looked like he had been tarred and was about to be feathered.
I would have been so pissed. Oh my god.
And it, like, splattered the ceiling. Got all over, like, we had it got all over the electrical panels, got all over my freezer. And so I got another 6 hours of overtime out of that. Like, I got to clean. My total overtime that I received was 8. But this poor guy, and he looked at me and he was like, "I'm so sorry." And I didn't tell him that I had the health department coming in. I just looked at him because, like, you look at this, you can't imagine how sad and pitiful this poor guy looked, just standing there coated in. This stuff is sticky. If you just spill your pop on the floor, it's sticky. But the syrup, is it when you get your pop, 1/5 of it is that syrup, and the other 4/5 are the soda water. So he got straight syrup. Be like if somebody just opened up a barrel of any kind of pancake syrup and dumped it on him.
Oh my god.
I couldn't be mad. Like, this guy was, and he had to drive home like that.
Oh no.
And we weren't anywhere near like a truck stop or someplace where he could go get a shower. You know, if I had lived across the street, I'd have been like, "That's my house over there. Here's the key." I'll let my husband know what's going on. You need to go get cleaned up. Here's some extra clothes. Like, but yeah, this poor guy. But the next day when the health department came in, I still had that kitchen spotless, like, completely. Wow. And they still dinged us on stuff.
Oh my god.
Like there was still stuff there. Like we want you to. It's going to be okay. You can still do your start, but by that date you have to. And one of the things they dinged us on was the faucets, not the faucets, but the sink handles.
Mm-hmm.
And it was because we were supposed to do that, and they had told us to do that, and the company had told them that we did that, and they hadn't checked, and we hadn't done that. So, yeah, your officials in your government that are supposed to be protecting you from things like food poisoning and bad ingredients in your food and poor construction on, say, the system that transports flammable gases into your house to keep it from, being cold. So you can run your furnace, run your stove, run your water heater and stuff. That their job is to make sure that those things don't make your house explode. Whether or not the officials in charge who are supposed to be making sure those people do their job right so you don't suffer consequences of them not doing their job right, they care more about whether or not their authority is respected than they do about whether or not they're doing their job.
Yeah.
Yes, David Lowboy, I'm from Ohio, so we have sin candles instead of sink handles, and we have a community just north of Dayton named after a well-known city in France, Versailles, the city of treaty fame, but in Ohio it's called Versailles. But
You're
yeah.
allowed to do that, and you're allowed to say Lima, because you're not French and you're not Portuguese.
That's true. And then we're also allowed to say Cairo instead of Cairo because we're rednecks and you can't tell us what the fuck to do. But yeah. and then half the state says Cairo and the other half says Cairo. But not very many people say Cairo. So there you go. But then again, if you're from one part of the state, you're from Ohio. And if you're from another part of the state, you're from Ohio.
Ohio.
Ohio. Yeah.
OH.
Yeah, I grew up in Ohio, but I live in Ohio. So a certain fandom will understand what I just said, and nobody else does. Yeah. Oh, David, you know. Yes. You should know. Mr. Youngstown. Okay.
I have on good authority that it's all Ohio.
Nope. It's all Ohio. Because that's where I grew up. But
if it's all Ohio, then where's
Ohio?
David?
So have you actually seen the werewolves? I have to know. Because I heard about the werewolves in Youngstown. Youngstown has werewolves, guys. And yes, according to other people that I have met from Youngstown, Wolfman does have nards. But with that, we'll get back to the point there. Yeah, they don't. This idea of term limits, like, it's such a cop-out. It is such a cop-out. Judges can be impeached if they don't do their job right, and they should. But the state should not impeach the people's choices preemptively just because they don't like how they're doing their job. Let's see. It is 9:21. We better get. We'll continue with this next week. But you see what's going on here. There is more to this. I will continue this next week. It's the full set of things. We may not go over the full set of things because some of them are worse than others, and some of them are easier to understand than others. But they're closing off all the ways that you can contribute to the process of putting people in office who are going to determine what the bureaucracy does and who is involved in it, But they've made no mention whatsoever of placing any limitations on the power of the bureaucracy. Notice that. You should be concerned about these people. So this coup that they're trying to do, they're organizing with people from other countries, elites in the United States, and financiers from the World Economic Forum to be able to manipulate your elections, control which candidates you can support, how much you can know about those candidates, and how you vote, and how much recourse you have over, whether the election outcome was valid or not. And they've been doing this for 2 years. They've been working on this for 2 years. So we'll talk more about this next week. Let's see. Yeah, I already read Meredith G's super chat. We do not have any Rumble rants or super chats, so yeah. That's going to be it. Thanks everybody for listening. Thanks to my two co-hosts for going over this. Is some dry material again, I know, but at the same time, if you really think about it, it's not. Like this is rage material. This is just as much rage material as last week. It's just not as graphic.
Yeah.
This is the state telling you, you can't tell me no. So thanks for going through that with me. Good night, all. Thanks very much, Brian, for working in the background to make all of this happen.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.